Convicted felon Donald Trump needs all the campaign cash he can get to pay his legal fees. So yesterday, he sent out a fundraising email with the subject, "Haul out the guillotine."
Stephen Colbert's monologue began with the kind of sharp-tongued energy that had defined his career, but this time, the stakes felt higher. The nation was still reeling from the shocking result of Donald Trump's re-election, a victory over Kamala Harris that many had not expected to see. The weeks following his second inauguration had been marked by chaos, questionable executive actions, and whispers of impropriety that now seemed impossible to ignore. Colbert, never one to soften his blows, seized the moment to channel public frustration into satire so piercing it seemed to burn straight through the walls of the White House. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. From the start, his dismantling of Trump's early second-term behavior carried a sense of urgency. He underscored the strangeness of a political climate in which, after 4 controversial years, the American electorate had again placed Trump at the helm. The comedy was not light-hearted jabbing, but rather a scalpel cutting through the contradictions of a presidency that claimed stability while exuding constant turmoil. Colbert's takedown reflected the collective anxiety of millions of Americans who were already wondering how much turbulence the country could endure during another 4 years of Trump. His words carried the pulse of a nation caught between disbelief and resignation, and it was clear his performance was more than just entertainment. It was cultural resistance. Trump's second term had barely begun, and yet Colbert was already dissecting the missteps that defined those first months. The administration appeared disorganized, rolling out policies without clear planning or communication. Key advisors clashed publicly, press briefings descended into confusion, and scandals began surfacing before the ink on the oath of office had dried. Colbert portrayed this chaos as inevitable, mocking the idea that Trump's re-election meant lessons had been learned, or a new era of discipline had dawned. Instead, he illustrated how old habits, impulsive decisions, erratic messaging, and reliance on loyalty over competence were already undermining governance. The laughter he generated was cathartic, but underneath it lay a recognition of the instability shaping the country's direction. The late-night host then dove into the personal accusations that had begun swirling, allegations of multiple secret affairs that painted a portrait of hypocrisy. These accusations, aimed at Trump's fidelity to Melania, carried a tabloid quality, yet their political weight could not be ignored. For Colbert, this material was ripe for satire, and he treated it with the mix of mockery and incredulity that made audiences lean in closer. He framed the rumors not as isolated scandals, but as part of a larger pattern, a leader whose private life echoed the recklessness of his public one. The implication was clear: if trust could not be maintained within the family, how could it be extended to the nation? In this way, Colbert merged the personal and political, amplifying public doubts about character and credibility. The stagecraft of Colbert's dismantling was striking. He built his performance like a wave, beginning with biting humor, then escalating into outrage, and finally landing in exasperated disbelief. This rhythm mirrored the emotional state of many Americans. They were laughing, yes, but it was laughter threaded with weariness. Colbert's critiques gave voice to the nagging question: how could the country be reliving this saga again, as though the lessons of the first term had been cast aside? The absurdity of the situation became his comedic fuel, and with every punchline, the audience was reminded of the surreal nature of Trump's continued dominance in American politics. The victory over Kamala Harris had been framed by Trump as proof of enduring popularity, but Colbert challenged that narrative with cutting precision. He pointed to the divisions that had intensified during the campaign, highlighting how Trump's appeal rested not on unity, but on deepening cultural rifts. By ridiculing the self-congratulatory tone of the administration, Colbert underscored the hollowness of triumph built on division. His humor pushed viewers to reconsider the meaning of victory when it left the nation fractured and exhausted. The comedy in this sense was not simply about Trump himself, but about the societal mirror his leadership held up to America. In mocking the alleged affairs, Colbert tapped into a timeless theme of power, corrupted by personal indulgence. He painted the image of a leader juggling the demands of office while entangled in clandestine relationships, a scenario that echoed the excesses of rulers from history. This dramatization served as more than a jab at scandal. It was a commentary on the dangerous distraction such behavior posed. The satire suggested that while Trump relished his role as both politician and celebrity, the blending of those personas had created vulnerabilities that jeopardized trust in the office of the presidency itself. The scandal, framed through Colbert's humor, became a parable about responsibility abandoned in favor of ego. Every joke, every barb, every exaggerated mimicry Colbert delivered seemed calibrated to remind audiences of the volatility of Trump's governance. He cast the president as both the protagonist and the punchline of a national comedy, a figure whose unpredictability blurred the line between politics and performance. Yet beneath the laughter lingered an unspoken dread, the recognition that the chaos was real, not merely scripted entertainment. Colbert's humor worked as a shield, giving Americans a way to process the instability without succumbing to despair. But it also worked as a spotlight, forcing people to confront the gravity of the dysfunction. The accusations of secret affairs added a distinctly human dimension to Colbert's takedown. While the policy blunders and governance missteps affected the nation, the rumors of betrayal in his marriage resonated on a personal level. Colbert knew that comedy often works best when it strikes close to home, and he wielded this knowledge expertly. By juxtaposing Trump's grandiose claims of strength and loyalty with whispers of infidelity, he created a portrait of contradiction. The laughter this generated was tinged with moral judgment, an acknowledgement that leadership carries not only political but ethical expectations. For viewers, the mockery reinforced the idea that leadership without integrity corrodes trust at every level. As the monologue progressed, Colbert drew attention to the speed at which disillusionment had set in during Trump's second term. Barely months into the presidency, hope for a more measured or matured approach had already evaporated. Colbert highlighted this with relentless energy, illustrating how expectations of change had collided with the reality of repetition. The satirical narrative suggested that America had stepped into a time loop, doomed to relive the turbulence of the past 4 years with no escape. This framing resonated with audiences who felt trapped by circumstance, and the laughter it elicited was as much about shared frustration as about humor itself. Colbert's dismantling of Trump's early second-term months can also be seen as part of a larger tradition of satire, serving as political commentary. In moments of turmoil, comedians often become the cultural translators who distill complex realities into accessible narratives. Colbert's performance fits squarely within this tradition, transforming scandal and policy confusion into a storyline that audiences could both laugh at and learn from. His approach reaffirmed the power of humor to mobilize skepticism, to encourage critical thought, and to unite people through shared recognition of absurdity. The spectacle of Trump's presidency became fodder for a civic lesson delivered with a smile. The implications of this monologue extended beyond the immediate laugh lines. Colbert's dismantling served as a form of accountability, spotlighting the early failures of a presidency that had promised strength but delivered instability. It reminded viewers that leadership cannot be separated from character, that governance demands both competence and credibility. By weaving together the political and the personal, Colbert underscored the interconnectedness of private behavior and public trust. The accusations of secret affairs were not simply salacious gossip. In Colbert's hands, they became symbolic of a broader disregard for responsibility that mirrored the reckless approach to policy. The timing of Colbert's takedown was critical. In the fragile months following an election, narratives begin to solidify, shaping public perception of what lies ahead. Colbert intervened in this process, using satire to challenge the image of triumph Trump projected. By spotlighting chaos and scandal, he disrupted the narrative of inevitable success and replaced it with one of skepticism. This mattered deeply in a political landscape where perception often carries as much weight as reality. Colbert's performance contributed to the cultural framing of Trump's second term, ensuring that the story would not be told solely by those in power. The mockery of Trump's supposed affairs carried a particularly biting resonance because it came in the context of a marriage that had already been under public scrutiny. Melania Trump's often distant demeanor had fueled speculation for years, and Colbert's satire amplified this tension. He painted the image of a presidency burdened not only by political strife, but also by personal fractures. This duality made the takedown more potent, as it suggested instability at both the national and familial levels. For audiences, the humor was laced with unease. a reminder that chaos at the top reverberates through every aspect of governance. Colbert's dismantling also illuminated the precarious relationship between politics and celebrity. Trump's rise had always blurred the boundary between the two, and his second term was no exception. The accusations of affairs, the theatrical rallies, the impulsive social media posts, all reinforced the sense of a presidency performed as spectacle. Colbert mirrored this theatricality, turning Trump into a character on his stage. Yet in doing so, he underscored the dangers of confusing governance with performance. The satire became a cautionary tale about the costs of celebrity politics, a warning wrapped in laughter. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Colbert destroying Trump after his controversial second win? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.